It doesn't begin with them leaving. It begins with a feeling, a quiet one, easy to miss. But once it forms, everything starts to change. Because now, they don't just see you, they feel like they're letting you down. That feeling does not come from one mistake. It forms gradually, through moments that seem small, a reaction they didn't expect, a response that didn't land the way they thought, a moment where you felt something they didn't know how to handle. Not dramatic, but enough to register. And when it registers, their system does something specific. It doesn't move outward, it turns inward. They begin to assess themselves quietly. How did I handle that? Did I make it worse? Did I respond right? And those questions don't bring clarity, they bring doubt because they don't fully trust their emotional responses. They don't feel confident in how they handle emotion. So instead of feeling capable, they begin to feel uncertain. And uncertainty quickly becomes self awareness, not healthy awareness, heavy awareness, the kind that makes everything feel like it matters more. Because now every interaction feels like it could confirm something, that they're not handling this well, that they're not meeting you the way you need, that they're falling short. And once that idea enters, it doesn't leave easily because their system is sensitive to perceived failure, not loud failure, emotional failure, the kind you don't announce, the kind you feel. I didn't show up right. I didn't respond enough. I didn't understand them. And instead of expressing that, they internalize it. They carry it quietly because expressing it would require more emotional exposure, more vulnerability, more risk of getting it wrong again. So they stay silent. But the feeling keeps building, not loudly, subtly. And that subtle buildup starts to shape how they show up. They become more cautious, more careful, more measured, not because they want distance, because they're trying not to fail again. And that effort changes their energy because now they're not just connecting, they're trying to perform correctly, trying to respond in the right way, trying to avoid another moment. That makes them feel like they got it wrong. And when connection becomes performance, ease disappears, spontaneity fades. They begin to think before they speak, pause before they respond, hold back before they engage fully, because they are no longer trusting themselves. They are monitoring themselves, trying to prevent another internal signal that says, you didn't do this right. And that's where the shift begins, not in behavior. You can clearly see in how they experience themselves inside the connection. Because once they start feeling like they're failing you, they stop feeling safe, being fully present with you. And everything that follows comes from that. Once that feeling takes hold, it doesn't stay contained. It begins to influence how they interpret everything that follows. Because now, they are not just experiencing the connection, they are measuring themselves inside it. Quietly, constantly, every interaction becomes feedback, not about you, about them. How did I do? Was that enough? Did I handle that right? And those questions don't create confidence, they create pressure because there is no clear answer, no moment where they feel certain, only a constant sense that they might be getting it wrong. And that uncertainty keeps them on edge internally, not visibly. Internally, they begin to anticipate what might go wrong next, what might require more from them, what might create another moment they can't handle well. And that anticipation changes how they show up. They become more restrained, more controlled, more aware of everything they say and do, not in a natural way, in a guarded way, because now they are trying to avoid failure, not just be present. And that shift removes ease, because connection no longer feels like something They can move through freely. It feels like something they have to manage carefully, and that management creates distance, not intentionally, as a byproduct. Because when someone is constantly monitoring themselves, they are not fully in the moment. They are split. Part of them is engaging. The other part is evaluating, watching, checking, trying to make sure they don't get it wrong. And that split reduces presence, reduces spontaneity, reduces emotional flow, because everything is being filtered through self-doubt. They hold back what they would normally say, not sure if it will land right. They soften their responses, not sure if they might affect you too much. They avoid certain topics, not because they don't matter, because they might create emotion they don't feel equipped to handle. And each of those adjustments does something important. It protects them from feeling like they failed again, but it also changes the connection, because connection relies on openness, on presence, on trust in how you show up. And when those are replaced by caution, something shifts, not loudly, but consistently. You begin to feel that difference. The hesitation, the reduced depth, the way things don't flow the same way. And naturally, you respond to it. You become more aware, more attentive, trying to understand what changed, trying to reconnect to how it felt before. But what you're sensing is not just behavior, it's a state where they feel like they're failing you, even if you never said it, even if you never showed it. Because this feeling does not require confirmation. It builds from perception, from moments they interpret it as not enough, from reactions they didn't know how to handle, from emotions they felt responsible for but couldn't manage. And once that perception forms, it becomes their reality. They start seeing themselves through it. I'm not doing this right. I'm not meeting them. I'm not enough for what this requires. And those thoughts don't motivate more closeness. They create pressure, and pressure leads to control. Control leads to containment. Containment leads to a quieter kind of distance. Not obvious, but present. And over time, that state becomes consistent. Not because they chose it, because they never stepped out of it. They never challenged it. They never expressed it. So it continues, quietly shaping how they engage, how they respond, how they experience the connection, until everything feels different. Not because they stopped caring, because caring started to feel like something they were failing at. As that internal story becomes familiar, it starts to feel true, not questioned, not examined, just accepted. They stop asking if they're failing you. They start assuming they are. And once assumption replaces doubt, everything they do is shaped by it. They begin to expect that they won't meet you fully, that something they do will fall short, that their presence will not be enough. And that expectation changes their energy. They become less expressive, not because they have nothing to say, because they're unsure it will land well. They become less spontaneous, not because they don't feel anything, because they don't trust their reactions. They become less emotionally available, not because they don't care, because they feel like they'll mishandle what you bring. And over time, this creates a quiet withdrawal inside them, not physical, emotional. They are still there, still engaging, still responding, but not fully, because part of them is held back by the belief that they will get it wrong. And that belief keeps reinforcing itself, because every time they hold back, they create distance. And that distance changes how you respond. You begin to feel the gap, the difference, the missing depth. And naturally, you react. You try to understand it, to reconnect, to reach them. And that reaching sometimes carries more emotion, more intensity, more need for clarity. And when that happens, their internal story gets confirmed. See, I'm not handling this. I'm making this harder. I'm not enough for this. Even if that's not your intention, even if you're simply trying to connect, their system interprets it differently. Because once that belief forms, everything filters through it. Every moment becomes evidence. Every reaction becomes confirmation. And that's what makes the pattern so difficult to break. Because it is self-reinforcing. The more they feel like they're failing, the more they hold back. The more they hold back, the more the connection changes. The more the connection changes, the more you respond. The more you respond, the more they feel like they're not getting it right. And the cycle continues, quietly, consistently, without either of you fully understanding what's driving it. And over time, that cycle becomes the relationship, not in a dramatic way, in a steady one, a connection that exists, but feels strained, a connection that continues, but doesn't deepen the same way, a connection where something always feels slightly off, and that off feeling comes from one place. They are not showing up as themselves. They are showing up through self-doubt, through caution, through the need to avoid failing. And that changes everything. Because connection requires trust, not just in the other person, in yourself. Trust that you can respond, that you can handle emotion, that you can be present without getting it wrong. And when that trust is missing, connection becomes effort, not flow, performance, not presence. And performance cannot sustain real closeness. It creates a version of connection, but not the full experience. And eventually, that gap becomes visible, not in one moment, in how things consistently feel, less open, less natural, less secure. And that's when you start to realize something deeper is happening, not just distance, not just confusion, a quiet belief they carry that they are failing you, and everything you're experiencing is the reflection of that belief, playing out in real time. When you finally see it clearly, you stop chasing the behavior. You stop trying to fix the distance. You stop reacting to every small shift because now you understand what's underneath it. Not disinterest, not indifference, a quiet belief they carry that they are failing you. And once that belief takes hold, it doesn't need proof. It creates it. Everything gets filtered through it. Every moment becomes evidence. Every reaction gets interpreted through it. And that's why it feels so consistent, not extreme, but steady, because they are no longer responding to you directly. They are responding to how they feel about themselves with you. And that changes everything, because no matter how present you are, no matter how understanding you try to be, if they believe they're failing, they will keep adjusting themselves to avoid it. They will keep holding back, softening, containing, trying to reduce the chances of getting it wrong. And that effort creates distance, not because they want it, because they're trying to protect the connection from themselves. Because in their mind, they are the problem. They are the one not handling things right. They are the one creating difficulty. They are the one falling short. And when someone sees themselves that way, they don't move closer. They become careful, measured, controlled. And that control limits everything. It limits how much they express, how much they open, how much they allow the connection to grow. Because growth feels like more risk, more emotion, more chances to fail again. So instead of expanding, the connection gets contained, not visibly, but consistently. And once you recognize that, something shifts inside you. You stop taking it personally, not because it doesn't affect you, because you see where it's coming from. You see that their distance is not about your worth. It's about their perception of themselves. And that clarity frees you from something subtle, the need to prove yourself, to show them you're not too much, to convince them they're enough. Because now you understand. You can't change how they see themselves. You can't remove a belief that formed internally. You can't make them feel capable if they don't trust their own capacity. And that realization brings you to a different place. Not confusion, not frustration, clarity. Because now you can see what this connection actually is. Not the potential, not the beginning, the pattern, a dynamic where they feel like they're falling short and adjust themselves to avoid it. A dynamic where closeness creates pressure and pressure creates containment. A dynamic where presence exists but is limited by self-doubt. And once you see that, you stop asking the same questions. You stop asking, how do I fix this? You stop asking, how do I make them feel secure? Because their insecurity is not about you. It's about their internal experience. And you cannot solve that from the outside. But you can choose what you stay in. You can choose whether you continue to adapt to that limitation or whether you align with something different. Something where connection doesn't feel like performance. Something where presence doesn't come with self-doubt. Something where you are met without someone feeling like they're failing you. Because that exists. Not perfectly, but consistently. A connection where both people trust themselves inside it. Where emotion doesn't feel like something to get right. Where closeness doesn't create pressure. Where being present is enough. And choosing that begins with honesty, with seeing clearly, with trusting what you've been feeling without needing them to confirm it. Because the pattern has already shown you. And once you trust that, you stop staying in something that quietly limits you and start choosing something that can actually hold you. And if this put words to something you've been experiencing, comment, I'm not here to be measured. Because that moment, when you stop being evaluated through someone else's doubt and start standing in your own clarity, that's the moment everything begins to change. If you want to keep going deeper into this, stay with the inner Odyssey. Because once you understand these patterns clearly, you don't just see them differently. You stop being shaped by them.